people like under 30, probably they have never been in a bank branch.
This is such a fundamental disruption to the underlying infrastructure of money.
They interact with financial applications, and they will keep interacting with financial applications.
Luca Prosperi is one of DeFi's most respected credit and governance leaders, known for his work across Maple, Gearbox, and MakerDAO, where he helped shape on-chain credit markets and institutional DeFi strategy. With a background in traditional finance and protocol governance, he sits at the intersection of capital, credit, and crypto-native risk.
Consumers stopped going to bank branches a while ago. They will never go back.
Welcome back to The Real Up.
This is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy it.
I mean, it's gnarly. And I think, part of the philosophy is that you put yourself through hard things as a means of getting better. And, and my dad used to say this, I think it was a JFK quote. He said, we don't do things because they're easy. He was talking about getting to the moon. We do things because they're hard. It makes things more meaningful. And also kind of gives us the reassurance that we're able to do difficult things. And so is that part of your, do you kind of put yourself through the strain of, a week-long hike in the mountains, no sleep at, 25,000, in altitude? Do you do this as a means of like putting yourself through something difficult and just seeing you can do it? Or do you get some genuine sense of appreciation or fulfillment? What pushes you to do difficult things?
I think it's a combination of the two things. I think I've always had like a very deep relationship with pain for some reason. I used to be a semi-professional athlete before, while I was doing my career as a banker. And I think it's a bit is the challenge, but also the truth of going through experiences that are really hard. We live in this virtual world where like everybody is pretending to be something, and but when you go through this stuff, there's no pretending. It's very real. And I also think that pain in general is one of the most powerful forward-moving forces we have. Now, I think that when you have this type of relationship with pain, it also can become addictive. So you really want to go through hard stuff because the kick you get out of it is massive. And I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but this is also why I started being an entrepreneur. I was the typical insecure overachiever. I was a mathematician. I used to be in traditional finance. I was an investor. I got diagnosed with blood cancer the first week of COVID lockdown. I used to be a semi-professional Ironman distance athlete, so I was very fit. Something was wrong, and I thought I had COVID. I went to the hospital. In March, I was living in London. They told me, no, you don't have COVID, but you have cancer. I was like, sorry. So they put me and my wife in a room for like 7-8 months in isolation when I was doing chemotherapy. And the experience was obviously brutal, but I understood so much about myself, and it gave me so much self-confidence about what I wanted to do in my life that then the life after that was completely different. And so I think that I always go back to this type of experiences that are super pure and super genuine.
Is that when you realized you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I didn't realize I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I realized I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do with my life without caring about what the others thought. And I had a huge sense of urgency. And that became natural. The rest became natural. I always, it's part of my French, but I always think that the real superpower in life is not giving a shit about what other people think. And I think to be I cannot say I'm a successful entrepreneur, but to be an impactful entrepreneur, to try to be an impactful entrepreneur, you need to be that. You cannot live someone else's framework on how to launch a company. You don't read books on how to launch a company. You live your life and then you decide to do it. But Jensen from NVIDIA says, like, I hope hardship happens to you. And I think this is a very powerful quote.
It certainly teaches us. And to your point about entrepreneurship, and it's something you almost find, we call ourselves founders, but ultimately this life finds us. And we talk a lot about competition on this show, but ultimately you have to focus on your own product and your own self, because you spend too much time thinking about competition and it throws you off course. But to build something truly unique, you have to be an independent thinker. And I think something that you're describing is that to think too much about competition or not have these hardships is to really, to not give a shit about what other people think. That's the way to become an independent thinker. And it then begins you on this journey in which you can continue to explore some of these thoughts, and then you can find really what life entails after. And there's so much creativity and fertile ground to explore when you start exploring some of these independently thought things that doesn't really matter if anyone else cares about them or thinks about them, because you're exploring them. And there's so much to learn in that crease. And so I'm just curious, maybe you can continue to tell your story after being diagnosed, being in this room, learned about really becoming an independent thinker and why it was so important to you, and starting your entrepreneurial journey. What happened next? And generally, how did you find M0?
First of all, going back to what you're saying, I think that there is an important distinction. Being an independent thinker doesn't mean being arrogant and not listening to the feedback you receive around. I think what is very important is having relentless conviction in what you're doing, which is almost maniac, right? I mean, I always say, I was an investor before, so I don't need to do risk management for my investors. What I mean is, my investors, they have a portfolio, and they have a portfolio of different entrepreneurs that are different bets. I'm one of their bets. So my role is to go 500 kilometers an hour to try to achieve what I want to achieve. I cannot hedge my own company. So you need crazy, insane, relentless conviction, and also absorbing feedback. But what you're saying is also true, that we see, so because the role of the entrepreneur is so glamour these days. People say, okay, I want to found a company. I need to find the idea. As you said before, 100% agree. Is you get to a place where there is no other thing to do. You just need to do your own stuff, and it's not a choice. That's the only choice. And for me, I've always been an independent thinker, but I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. My family are doctors. They're probably against risk. They're super risk averse. So I did all the box ticking I could do. I went to business school. I started in consulting, went to business school. I became an investment banker. I went into private equity, but always with not 100% satisfaction, because I never flourished in these environments, because I'm a disruptor. And if you work in Morgan Stanley, you cannot be a disruptor. You need to be a great general in an army, which is a very powerful army. So I think it was very natural. When I spent my 2020 curing. I was diagnosed with a lymphoma, which was an advanced large mass Hodgkin's lymphoma that, thank God, was curable. I spent 2020 with my now wife doing pretty brutal chemotherapy. It took me a while to recover. Ironically, the world was on pause while I was doing this, so because of COVID. But then I just I didn't want to go back doing what I was doing before, and I started to study. I started writing. My career in crypto starts as a writer. I still write a Substack called Dirt Roads, which is very deep about DeFi and new money rails. I started naturally, organically collaborating with some projects, advising some funds, up to the point that actually some of the investors I was advising, they told me, look, you should start your own business. So I always joke that M0 raised $100 million of equity and never had a pitch book for the money I raised. Not because of arrogance, simply because I had an organic conversation with investors that saw what I was doing, what was my view of the world. So I think at the end of 2022, I was collaborating with Maker, one of the largest DeFi projects ever. And I realized, I thought that those DeFi projects were great proof of concepts, but they were not really ready to scale digital money, i.e. stable coins, where I thought the category could go. And so with Greg, who was also coming from the M0 Foundation, from the Maker Foundation, we decided to found M0. So we raised a very large seed round of $22.5 million in January 2023, when stable coins were absolutely not fancy and FTX had just collapsed. So it was definitely not. But we had conviction, so we had a lot of demand for what we were doing. And then from then on, we started working, and stable coins became super, super hot as a topic. And we think we're still scratching the surface. We think that money ultimately is infrastructure. M0 wants to build the most innovative money infrastructure in the world. And we think that digital money in general is the next iteration of bank deposits. So they're going to completely rewrite the way we interact with money. So there is lots of things to do. So you also need to have a very long-term vision, because you have 20, 30 years ahead to work, which is a privilege, in my opinion.
Blockchain shortcuts, templates, and widgets launch without friction for builders by builders. Visit enso.build.
Relay, low fees, lightning speed, and the power of multi-chain at your fingertips. Instant multi-chain payments. Choose any token on any chain. 75 plus networks supported. More than 5 million users. 8 billion plus volume processed. 70 million plus transactions. Fast, reliable, everywhere. Start swapping today. Only on Relay.
Especially, it speaks to why you raised so much so early, to give you runway to realize long-term vision. And so we recently had a guest on our show, and the name escapes me, but I remember what he said, which was that it was unexpected that we were going to have the landscape of stablecoins that we have today. Early on, we could have said, look, Tether, USDC, we know that these are going to survive. We believe in these stablecoins. But what we ended up with was a proliferation of stablecoins. Tens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of stablecoins. Different stablecoins will go live. And so M0 is effectively stablecoins as a service. You can correct me if there's a better explanation. But how do you think M0 fits into the landscape when we're talking about just a wide breadth of stablecoins rather than a very deep and narrow trajectory? How does that landscape evolve?
I would like to try to step back 1 second and just, for example, make a parallel with where we live today. So how many dollars do we have today?
Well, we have US dollars. We have several other different foreign exchange currencies.
Yeah, but even US dollars, there are thousands of US dollars. Every bank where you have the money deposited actually has a completely different risk profile from the other. The reason why you don't consider them different flavors, but you consider them as one, is because there is a lot of liquidity, and there is an entity behind it, like a central bank of a treasury, that guarantees some sort of interoperability. But the dollar that you have, like the M1 dollar that you have in an HSBC bank account, and a JP Morgan Chase bank account, and a Barclays bank account, or a Silicon Valley bank account, are completely different dollars. So the way you ignore it is that the infrastructure that connects them works very well, is very interoperable and very liquid. And all the complexity of this infrastructure is abstracted away from the user, because you see an application and there is a balance. You see like a Venmo, there is a balance. Right. You see a Robinhood, there is a balance. I think the same is happening in stablecoins. Now, in the early days, we have these brands of stablecoins that represent the issuance of $1. I think this is going to be behind us very soon. We will just have every application we interact with controlling their own dollar stack, and behind the scenes infra. Now, Circle is also infra. Tether is a mix. Tether is infra and distribution at the same time, because if you're in emerging markets, people really like the brand Tether. So I think that where M0 wants to play, M0 wants to create the most advanced on-chain native infrastructure that connects all those applications. So that if you want to if you want to launch Revolut, if you wanted to create Revolut today, instead of creating a front end that connects with APIs with like a bank, as Revolut was born 15 years ago, you would just have a front end that is directly interacting with smart contract and programs the dollar that exists on their platform on M0. So we just want to be behind the scenes and having infra that powers all those forms of dollars. And this infra is evolving. So obviously, control of the yield is number one, control of compliance, how interoperable this stuff is with other applications, and other features that we will keep adding. So that's our vision of the world: transparent and very fast infrastructure.
Something that you described when we're talking about the landscape of US dollars today is we have the illusion of fungibility. Like you're saying, the central bank guarantees the interoperability and guarantees
up to a certain extent
that all of these banks have, US dollars, real stamp money, US dollars in our bank accounts. And it gives the illusion that there's fungibility between Silicon Valley Bank and Barclays and Citi and all these different banks. And what we have in blockchain land on stablecoins is we have fragmentation. And so we don't think of the fragmented landscape of US dollars, we don't think of it the same way because we don't have a guarantor to give us the illusion of fungibility between these different stablecoins. So there's been there's the Genius Act kind of guarantees, like, if they meet these requirements and this criteria, then they do have the stamp of money. But we're going to continue to have all of these stablecoins. And so is there, I guess, how do we come to the illusion of fungibility or really guarantee the fungibility of stablecoins on chain?
You're touching, in my opinion, the most important point, because the most important aspect of money is not the solvency. Solvency is important, but is liquidity and interoperability. You need to be able, you need your money to be accepted. Like, Tether, for example, it's so liquid that nobody really cares what is backing it. Nobody knows what is backing it. Now it's getting better, like there is more transparency, but definitely the level of transparency is not that of a Genius Act, right?
It's a good point, because I remember Bitfinex and Tether back in Bitfinex days was like, what is backing this? And there was a lot of conspiracy theories, but those have kind of dissolved.
Yeah, dissolved, yes, but still there are like tens of billions of dollars of credit instruments in the Tether's balance sheet that people kind of ignore because it's trusted enough and is the right thing to do. So, like regulatory improvements like the Genius Act have provided more, like, better grounds for this solvency and a bit of interoperability. But what happens? Like, what it means is that you have stablecoin A, stablecoin B. Let's say they're both Genius compliant. If you want to move from stablecoin A to stablecoin B, you need to go back to the fiat system, and then you go back to the other stablecoin. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a fiat rails and there are crypto rails on top, and all this on and off ramping is that people use today in the so-called stablecoin sandwich. They moved into a stablecoin, they go somewhere else, and they go back in the fiat system. Yeah. Is very inefficient. It's a bit like, imagine, like we just invented emails and digital photography. And we're saying, it's so cool. We can scan a picture, send it. I can scan a picture, send it to you, and you can print it and frame it at home. Now, fast forward 20 years, nobody's scanning or printing pictures anymore. They are born digitally. They're still digitally. So I think we need some frameworks to create this interoperability directly on chain, where digital money lives. And we don't have it now because most of the stable coins actually move through secondary markets. You need secondary liquidity markets, which are very expensive because they require a ton of capital to function. And that's what we want to do also at M0. Like, imagine M0, for simplicity, is so what M0 is doing in a nutshell is it's completely separating what we call the upstream and the downstream of money. The upstream of money is, okay, I am a bank. I want to be an issuer of a stable coin. I want to give life to a stable coin. So I keep the collateral secure. I do the regulatory compliance, and then I push the button and I create a token. That is the upstream of money. Everybody wants to issue a stable coin today. Nobody cares. The most important thing is whether this stablecoin is actually embedded in the financial applications we use. Right. That's what we call the downstream of money. So if you are Cast, if you are MetaMask, if you are Hyperliquid, and you decide what type of dollar powers your infrastructure, your users just use it. So M0 separates completely the two things. Now, you have many issuers that can issue the same token. Is a white labeled, let's say, token called M. And many integrators, only with code, they take this code token and they program it downstream. That means that the integrators are developers. They don't care about the issuance, the banking rails, etc. They just take a token and they do cool stuff on top of it. And the issuers on the other side, they just issue one token and they sell it into the flow. That also means that all the liquidity network, the interoperability network is created around this open source token called M. You don't need to fragment it. Because as you were saying, fragmentation is a very big problem. All these stablecoin as a service companies of the early days of the previous generation, every success story is making the next success story more difficult. Because I am Paxos, I'm creating PayPal USD for you, PayPal. It's very, very successful. It's making the next launch more difficult because then you need to bootstrap your liquidity layer from scratch. And why would you do it? There is no need to do that. But we were early in this vision of the word, but we're seeing a convergence of many other players starting to do the same.
You mentioned MetaMask, and you guys are the deployers of the MetaMask stablecoin. So could you talk to us about how that came to be?
Absolutely, because I think this is a great example of how we see the word. So first of all, we start from seeing we think that the future of financial services is going to be non-custodial. There are going to be the new fintech powerhouses will be non-custodial. MetaMask is an example. So MetaMask has, I don't know, I think 30 to 40 or more monthly active users on platform, million.
30 to 40 million, yeah.
Yes, which is twice Coinbase, huge. And they have tens of billions of dollars of assets sitting on their platform. And so they're saying, okay, we would like to control more of the experience of our users. So we invested on a layer 2 called Linea, Base for Coinbase. We would like to have a digital dollar asset, a MetaMask dollar that is fully integrated with our services, with our swap engines, etc. We control it. We control the yield instead of just leaving it to Circle. And there is a bunch of stuff that we want to control, how it connects with our credit card products, on and off ramping, etc. And so they decided to partner with us to design this digital dollar form called MetaMask USD. So MetaMask USD is ultimately an extension of this M token that I told you before, with very specific MetaMask requirements and certain frameworks for liquidity interoperability that they required and we built for them. So MetaMask is our ideal client because they're just thinking about non-custodial. They cannot KYC their customers. Their customers are non-custodial. They're thinking in crypto rails. Now, they also had a requirement, though. There is a regulatory requirement and say we would like the MetaMask dollar to be onshore compliant with US law because a lot of our clients are in the US. A lot of the products, most probably that we will bootstrap, will be in the US. So we need an issuer of record of this token. It is a US institution. So the institution that brings to life this token and stores the collateral. And we decided to partner with Bridge to do that. So, Bridge has been acquired by Stripe a year ago. We have known Zach and the team, Zach Ariel and the team for a long time. We have a lot of respect for them. They are very smart engineering-wise, which is rare. You have a lot of issuers of stablecoins in traditional finance that don't really understand how crypto rails work. Okay. And so they connected to the protocol to bring it to life. So what it means is that every time, how is the MetaMask dollar born? Somebody goes into a pool, an AMM pool, a decentralized exchange pool, deposits USDC and wants to swap for MetaMask dollar. They find the MetaMask dollars there, ready for them. Now, when the pool runs out of MetaMask dollars, there is a market maker that takes all these USDCs, goes to Bridge and say, okay, mint more MetaMask dollars. The guys at Bridge, they take the USDC for simplicity. They buy eligible collateral treasuries on chain or off chain. They put them in a box. they use the M0 protocol to verify these reserves, and they create these MetaMask dollars. Technically, they create M, that is wrapped into MetaMask dollars. So they bring it to life. So all the on-chain part of the infrastructure is M0. All the off-chain part of the stack is Bridge. And it's a very, very powerful partnership. The clients, the users of MetaMask and MetaMask itself ignores all the complexity of the off-chain banking rails. They're abstracted away. They just take a token and they program. And it is very powerful. Like, we have many developers that can bootstrap their own stablecoins, or they can embed stablecoins in their own applications through M0, going to the M0 libraries and just doing it only with code in a matter of like hours or days. And behind the scenes, there are issuers that create these tokens and bring it to market. And the developers, they don't need to do APIs with banks, KYB with banks, or do stuff like that.
The wait is over. The Talus testnet is live. Be part of the revolution. Join now at testnet.talus.network. Asset management redefined. Built on ERC 7621. Standardize how you launch, manage, and trade on-chain baskets. This is Alvara, the standard for on-chain asset management. Hibachi. Provable. Trade perps with speed and security. Earn rewards. Visit hibachi.xyz. Trading on fire.
This is such a fundamental disruption to the underlying infrastructure of money. Do you think consumers are going to be disrupted? Do you think they're going to have any idea that now their digital money is running on a blockchain?
No, I think that. So, I mean, I'm 42 years old, so definitely I'm older than the average crypto user.
You look young.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm definitely my prime, let's say, but I haven't been in a bank branch. I don't know last time I was in a bank branch. So I think that people like under 30, probably they have never been in a bank branch. So they interact with financial applications, and they will keep interacting with financial applications. I think the difference is going to be for the financial applications. It's going to be so much easier to launch fintech apps of any kind, because they will plug it will be wallet centric and plug into blockchain infrastructure instead of bank APIs. So I think the consumer will just see a proliferation of innovation of fintech applications, because it's going to be so much easier for fintech entrepreneurs to build cool stuff on top of blockchain rails. But the consumers, they stopped going to the bank branches a while ago. They will never go back.
Right. And so that's how this evolution may impact, the set of people that are off chain and maybe have this loose relationship with money. But the people on chain are having a very close look at this. For instance, my last guest, question is effectively how does this onslaught of stablecoins coming into the on-chain world, what will be some of the second order effects that take place on chain? Our last guest said the lending markets. These are applications that stand to gain, because when stablecoins come in, generally more things coming on chain, people are going to want to collateralize it. What other knock-on effects do you think are going to take place on chain as a result of trillions of stablecoins coming on?
I think everything. I think more liquidity comes in, more substance there is for on-chain primitives to actually function. Lending markets is a great example. I think lending markets are a very, very powerful primitive. The more liquidity comes in, the more assets come in, because there is liquidity, the more you can use them. Decentralized exchanges, DEXs that are also evolving, prediction markets, now fixed term lending markets. There's a lot of stuff that can be finally powered for when there are like billions and trillions of transactions happening on chain. So I don't like to say a maximalist, but I am a DeFi believer. I think the difference is like the DeFi we will see, decentralized finance we will see in the next phase is going to be different from the previous one. It's going to be more institutional friendly. It's going to be semi-permissioned, still run on Ethereum, but it's going to be more programmable so that institutions can interact. And we are already seeing it. Like if you see the difference between Aave as a lending market and Morpho. Morpho allows institutions to have siloed lending markets. They know who is providing liquidity. They know who is tapping that liquidity. Uniswap v4, the new iteration of the most famous decentralized exchange, allows hooks, so you can actually control the premises of the lending markets that you bootstrapped. We are power users of Uniswap infrastructure. So DeFi is also evolving. It's becoming more sophisticated as more money comes in.
Fascinating. And so I guess one of my last questions here is what do you say to the next issuer of a major stablecoin on M0? How does the MetaMask stablecoin help the next success story of the next one to launch on M0?
I am saying two different things to because when we say issuer, we think that we confuse two roles. Like for example, the MetaMask. MetaMask is not an issuer of MetaMask dollar. MetaMask is just an integrator, right?
Like you said, it's bridge.
Exactly. So I think the issuer and the extension partners, we call it, or the application. I'm saying two different things. To the issuer, I'm just saying that stop. To anybody who's thinking about issuing a stablecoin, a financial institution who's thinking, or a bank to issue a stablecoin, is stop believing that you can actually launch the next Tether and you can make Tether's money issuing a stablecoin. Nobody cares about the stablecoin you're issuing. In the same way, nobody knows who is actually the custodian of the securities we have in Robinhood. So you need to make yourself, your instrument programmable and developer friendly enough so that is integrated in the applications. If your instrument is not developer friendly, it will die with you. What I'm actually saying instead to the developers after MetaMask story is everybody who is intermediating huge sums of client funds by relying on proprietary third-party solutions, which are great, still like Tether or Circle, they're giving up control. They're giving up, best case, enormous amount of money, and they're giving up total control. We have seen, so think about it. We're seeing the so-called stablecoin war in Hyperliquid. Now that Hyperliquid had a bake-off to say, okay, we actually have $5-6 billion of USDC, we want to have our own stablecoin. Yes, it's because of money, because imagine $5 billion, 4% of $5 billion is a lot of money. It's probably a couple of $100 million a year. But also, Hyperliquid is a non-KYC decentralized perp exchange. What happens if Circle, who is a private company, says, we kind of don't like this and we switch you off? So I think that every large application that is accumulating funds, they should be in control. And MetaMask, who has been the innovator since the very beginning, is leading the charge.
And so this movement is about taking control of your own assets and your own liquidity, issuing your own stablecoin as a result of being your own central bank. And this gives you the sovereignty and freedom and control over your own money.
Absolutely. And now with protocols like M0, others, we have been a bit pioneer here, hopefully is a competitive advantage for us, but you can do it abstracting completely away the issuance regulated part. You can do it only with code. And then what I say on the other side to the issuers is, if you're a financial institution, if you're a bank, in the past, you were also controlling your distribution network, right? You had branches. Now you're not controlling your distribution network anymore. Your distribution are financial applications. So you need to make yourself developer friendly. If you're not developer friendly, you will die. Because nobody is going to use your asset. They will use other assets because that asset is commodity.
Just the world we live in today. Luca, just last question, close this out. What do you say to those of the people who say, M0, like who are they? Like where do they come from? Kind of new on the scene, and what are some closing thoughts here as you're approaching the stablecoin landscape and you're looking at it? Where do you think we go from here? And yeah, generally close this out.
I think we are As I told you before, I am convinced, I was convinced when we founded M0 that we are at the very beginning of the most dramatic, paradigmatic shift in money, in financial intermediation in our lifetimes. So there is a lot of stuff to do, and there is a lot of room for successful companies to be built, but you need to be serious and long-term oriented because like, you know, these are like very fundamental big projects, and people that think that, okay, Circle and Tether are the winners, the rest is just a tail. They don't understand that $300 billion of stablecoin float is a ridiculously small number. This number is going to 100x. So to any entrepreneur who wants to build in the space, I suggest to spend time here, because I don't think there is a more profitable place to spend time on. And for anybody who wants to understand, doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, but wants to collaborate in building stuff, they should definitely get in touch. M0 is growing, is expanding the business, it is expanding the team. And M0 is a big project, right? We raised $100 million of equity from some of the very best investors in the space, from Polychain, Pantera, Ribbit Capital, Bain Capital, etc. Because this is a go big or go home endeavor. You need to build big stuff. It is a privilege to have the opportunity to do that, but we will stick around for a couple of decades more, at least, before we really make a dent in the universe.
Luca, thank you so much for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure. And trillions. Stablecoins are going to trillions.
Absolutely.
Go.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.